For as long as the internet has existed, so have internet mysteries. And to me, it feels like a very generational thing. Every era of the internet has its own defining brand of horror, each one evolving with technology and the culture of its time. For example, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was mostly shock sites and like kinda okay creepypastas. And fast forward a little bit after that and we have a brand new type of horror. Stuff like Kakaida 3301 and Sad Satan. Well, today analog horror and ARGs still dominate most indie horror projects. But I can't help but feel that due to horror always having to move forward somehow to continue being scary, we leave a lot of stuff behind. Stuff that growing up I thought was the coolest thing ever, and to an 11-year-old me was like the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. And more or less, I kind of just wanted to make a video talking about stuff that I remember growing up, and some like kind of sprinkled in stuff of stuff I learned for researching this video. So whoever's watching this, I hope you like it. YourGhostStories.com first opened in around 2005 and was a paranormal forum board, similar to 4chan's X board and r/NoSleep. But it was more about personal experiences deemed by others to be real or not, and at its peak it was one of the most popular boards. But on January 14th, a user who went by Clarence joined a group's forum discussion and told his childhood story. The first time I encountered something supernatural, I was about 7 years old and faking sick, so I could stay home from school because of this kid who'd been picking on me during recess. So there I am, fake sick and lounging on the sofa in my grandparents' living room, when the sound of my grandmother coming down the stairs filters in from the foyer. I quickly close my eyes, getting into character, hoping that she doesn't realize that I'm faking. I hear my grandmother enter the den and shuffle around for a moment, gathering her things like her wallet and keys. After a few moments of shuffling, I hear the side door in the attached rec room shut and the car starting outside. I wait a few beats just to be safe and then open my eyes. The sound comes from the attached rec room I just mentioned, which is actually an add-on my grandfather had converted from a 2-car garage. The room is fully equipped with a wraparound sofa, stock bar, and a box full of G.I. Joes. Though right now, my focus is on this closet. The only thing that divides the den and the rec room is a 4-inch carpeted drop, and so I can clearly see across the closet, which is built into the room's far wall. And to a 7-year-old Clarence's wide-eyed amazement, I can see that the closet door is slowly opening. I can't move, my eyes are fixed on the door as it casually swings open. Is she gone? The voice is a distinct whisper, clear and yet somehow not right. The way it seems to hum on the last syllable of every word, sort of like a vibration you hear when a bass note is played through an old amplifier. I can still hear the voice, as clear as day in my memory. I wish I couldn't, but I can. The first one leans out. He's shorter than the doorknob, and looks, for lack of a less ridiculous reference, like a humanoid puppet from an American children's show. The only difference is this little guy isn't being puppeteered by anyone, and his legs are clearly visible. 7-year-old me is so fascinated by this aspect. I'm suddenly overwhelmed by the desire to get closer, to get a better look at this puppet thing. My fears take a backseat to my childish curiosity, as I begin to sit up and get out of bed. Which seems to be a response to the first puppet's question. This new voice brings me to a halt. If there was something vaguely creepy about the first one's tone, then the second one's voice is downright disturbing. People don't sound like that. Make the sound without opening your mouth. Now imagine that sound but louder with a bass-like hum to it. The first puppet exits the closet, followed by its nearly identical companion. The two of them are only visible for a moment as they hurry behind the rec room's wraparound sofa. Once again, my fear subsides, giving way to curiosity. Trying my best not to make a sound, I slip down off the den sofa and slowly crawl across to the rec room. The first puppet now is apparently bending over something behind the rec room sofa, and can now see his jeans poking behind it. What looked like to be faded gray denim overalls. They were both wearing them. I make my way across to the rec room, still on my hands and knees, following the long end of the wraparound sofa, over to where I can see the first puppet's legs poking out. I'm inches away when I finally stop crawling, too afraid to get any closer. I can't even bring myself to poke my head around the bend in the sofa. So instead, I simply reach out and place a hand on the puppet's back, saying in a timid whisper, "Hey." The thing instantly whirls around and its big puppet eyes are now glaring at me. As I retract my hand, it leans around the corner of the sofa, bringing us face to face. When I open my mouth to say something, The puppet darts out a hand and pinches my arm. Hard. Harder than I have ever been pinched before or since. Hard enough to break the skin on my forearm and cause a small scab to form. With that thought, I'm up and across to the side door, and then out onto the lawn, where I wait for what feels like hours until my grandmother finally comes back. She starts to scold me as she exits the car. Something about faking sick just so I can go outside and play. But then she sees my face. At first, I didn't want to tell her what took place. Even at 7 years old, I'm aware that these kind of things just don't happen. But then she asks about the tiny smear of blood on my arm, and I just break down. I tell her a condensed version of the story. I even admit to fake sleeping when she was leaving. After my grandmother tries to insist that it was nothing more than a bad dream, brought on by my fever. I had been faking all day and I still couldn't even admit it. So the conversation ends there, at least as far as my grandmother is concerned. For me though, to this day it's still a constant debate. Am I simply crazy, or did scary demon puppet things actually dwell in the toy closet of my grandparents' rec room? I didn't say it was a logical debate. I can even remember weeks afterwards sitting in class and looking at the scab on my arm, replaying the events in my head, thinking, oh yeah, that happened. That actually happened. This marks the end of our first entry, and sadly there has yet to be an update on the story. And it's already been 12 years already, so it's unlikely we'll ever get one. But this story has stuck with me for a long time, and I still remember when my friend first sent me it years ago, since we were both super into internet horror. I think the reason it stuck with me is that it leaves so much unanswered, which I really appreciate. I don't know, I feel like these days it's pretty common for online horror, both real and fake, to have like completely fully fleshed out characters and leaving nothing to the imagination. Which, don't get me wrong, I enjoy a lot, but it has its pros and cons. But either way, this story is a favorite of mine and I really wanted to share it with you guys. But now I want to change gears a little bit and talk about something I discovered for this video. Back in 2016, a user named Squidward Tennyson posted in the r/Internet Mysteries forum, asking for volunteers to help find the meaning behind a strange website. Hello, I recently rediscovered an obscure website, which I first came to know back in 2016. I was kinda scared to investigate it back then, but now it sparked some mild interest in me. Here's a link. Clicking on that link he gave us, we get this. We first see a banner image for the site and a written introduction. I tried to reverse image search for the banner, but unfortunately no results came up. So whatever this is, it is most likely original and made for the site itself. I don't even know where to start with this image, so I'm not going to try. We're just going to continue to the introduction. In the 18 months before my death, I proceed to set forth the keys to death and hell. In this process, I envision a snapshot of the world as it appeared to me at that time. Clearly a cut and paste sculpture taken from various articles. Science fiction, culture, and political events. Happenings in the realm of the occulture. Flame wars on the Z-list, my life, my world, my email, etc. So it's just a cut-up of these things. Somehow from this cut-up leaked out the most beautiful vision of infinite compassion. And this vision came forth and stood forth, even amongst all the horror. It shone through so bright, really true, and undeniably real. There was more compassion and love for me than I had ever dreamed or imagined. It was like a garden, paradise all around me, blooming with beauty and love. It was there all the time, this unbelievable garden, and it opened up to me. My life with Andrea, Agony, and the love that we were reflecting back and forth between each other was so magnificent and powerful that it's like we're facing death every day, celebrating our love every day. We were facing it because that's the way we lived, but for me, maybe it took the imminence of physical death to bring it into full clarity. As my own death approaches steadily, I am blessed and deeply moved by the enormous display of affection and love for my daughter Heidi. Heidi's love is a limitless ocean that has healed me so much from the pain of life. Though she is young, 17, and losing her dad, she shows all the signs of blooming into a spectacular woman of insight and compassion. I'm surprised and grateful from the outpouring tenderness seeing those around me, and especially my only child. Offering me such unconditional love and compassion changes me, heals me, and reaffirms the silent knowledge of my heart. These are the gifts I take with me. I will go caressed by the kisses of Nuit. I face death without fear. I leave for this world the keys of death and hell, to unlock the secrets we keep from ourselves. But for any who would wonder or wander, lost in Temple Dahmer, I want to declare the real secret of deathandhell.com is infinite compassion. Those who know will know. The archetypal Theramorph is in the Lotus. An eternal love and chaos. Infect Bin Laden. 11/11/01. Dude, I think that is like the most heartfelt thing I have ever read in my entire life. Here comes the fucking waterworks, dude. And half this shit I don't even understand what he's saying. I think he's probably one of the top 5 writers of our generation or something. I don't even know who he is or was, but the way he can fucking verses through text is like so beautiful. But nevertheless, let's keep going. After reading the introduction, we see an enter button. Clicking on this button, we are greeted by the keys of death and hell, and the topics are interesting to say the least. And I can't even say the title of them here. And most of the stuff in them are pretty vile and kind of disgusting. I was planning on reading a few, but I kind of don't want to, so I'm not. But this website is old, like really old. By putting the URL in the Wayback Machine, we can see that the site was created in 2001, like the dated intro suggests, making the site 24 years old and it's still up. So what is this thing? Well, the first and kind of only clue we get is the name Infect Bin Laden. Searching for his name online, we don't really get a lot, but we see another red post. Again, back in 2016, a user named Scared Blasphemies posted in the r/Cosmic Magic subreddit. Rip Merrick, creator of Z-Cluster. Many years ago, back in the dark times of the 90s, a man named Mark DeFreitas created an online chaos magic organization called Z-Cluster, and its email list, the Z-List. It was a group of crazy people. There was the guy who practiced psionics, and Infect Bin Laden, who took the name before 9/11, who created deathandhell.com and ran Temple Dahmer. I know that didn't really give us a lot of new information, but it's slowly starting to come together. But we do hear some familiar names. For example, the Z-List, which we heard back in the introduction, is name dropped here. Even though we don't really know what it is exactly, we can assume that it was some type of forum board back in the early 90s. But probably the biggest piece of information we got from this is that Infect Bin Laden was a part of the chaos magic community, which now makes a lot of sense if you look at the site and like what it's talking about. But for those who don't know, chaos magic is a modern type of magic that started in the late 20th century. It is based on the idea that you can create your own rules and methods for magical practices instead of following traditional rituals or beliefs. The main idea is that power comes from the mind and your ability to focus, rather than from ancient traditions or specific deities. But after that, the trail kind of goes cold. Until I went back and realized he has a whole biopic on his website for himself. It's right next to Cyber Pimps from Hell and the Pavlonian Gag Reflex. How could I have ever missed it? The more I look into the site, the more like I cannot take it seriously. The whole site is like this. But looking at the biopic, we can finally see who is meant to represent Infect Bin Laden. The rest of the biopic is pretty much what you expect. There are a few other images of him, along with some stories about his involvement in the occult and chaos magic. Still, a lot of it, like the rest of the website, is pretty confusing for someone who doesn't already know much about the community. After this, there's really nowhere else to go, drawing a conclusion to this entry. This whole part of the video has been like a fucking roller coaster for me. From like the beautiful, heartfelt intro to then having to read about sex magicians for the next hour just to do research for the script, and that's like barely an exaggeration. But still had a lot of fun working on this part of the video, and hopefully you could take something positive from this, I guess. But now, onto our final entry. I kind of want to do like a light one that's less serious than the one we just did, so here we go. Dog eating cereal with spoon was a Spanish/Mexican creepypasta and was posted to Facebook, but it seems the original is lost, at least to me, but there is still some translated copies in circulation, and today we're reading one I found. Like 3 years ago, my cousin and my uncle invited me and my dad to the local stadium to watch a football game, cause family tradition or something. The plan was Dad and I would pick them up in the car. When we got to their house, my cousin says we have to take his 6-year-old brother, because the babysitter canceled last moment, so the game ended and our team lost. But anyway, we're heading back to my uncle's house, and once there, both my cousins leave the car running, going straight towards the bathroom. but my uncle stays at the car and talks to me and my dad. And then we hear man screams like someone was getting tortured, so we run straight into the house. We get into the living room and my cousin is all disheveled, with a bright red face doing these disturbing gestures. And my little cousin is crying, hiding under the living room table. We thought the older cousin was convulsing, so we shoved a cloth in his mouth. I swear to God, my uncle was desperate and almost crying. He tried to talk to my cousin, but he couldn't hear us or just ignored us. Then we tied him with ropes from the garage while he kept screaming and contorting. But he calmed after a while and started to cry quietly. We still tried to talk to him, but he seemed not to understand us. My younger cousin was still crying, but more calm. So we asked him what happened, and he said when they entered the house, they saw the dog eating cereal with a spoon. Man, if you just saw my cousin getting all crazy again, so fuck it, we called an ambulance. Cause we didn't even know what to do. We all thought my cousin was just overwhelmed with everything, so he probably wasn't expressing right. But after a few days, when things eased up, we asked him again, but he kept saying the same thing. That when they entered the house, they saw the dog eating cereal with a spoon. My aunt would get hysterical, since she didn't understand what the fuck he meant, till the kid got desperate and did a drawing of what they saw. When they entered the house, the family fucking dog sitting on a chair, in the dining room, eating a bowl of cereal, using a spoon. My aunt got even crazier with that drawing since they had not seen their dog. And that was it. My little cousin had to go to therapy every week and the dog never appeared. This story has been passed around for a while now, making it kind of hard to figure out who the original poster is, or if there's any follow-up. But even just this version alone is still pretty terrifying. At least it is to me. I know it's a little out there and it's pretty hard to believe it's real in the first place, but the idea that one day your dog starts eating fucking food with a spoon like a human and just sees you and then tries to hide it is fucking terrifying. And I just had to share this story with someone. But that's the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. This is my first video and I tried to make it the best I could. It took a while to edit, but I'm planning to make another one soon. Hopefully the next one will be a lot smoother since I learned a lot from this one.